All right, today we're going to learn how to solve a ratio proportion word problem. Now, you already learned how to solve a proportion. Remember, you cross multiply the two numbers that give you an answer and set up an equation and then solve the simple one-step equation by dividing on both sides. But to solve a ratio proportion word problem is what we're going to do today. Now, here are the steps. It's very easy to solve a ratio proportion word problem if you learn the steps and follow them one at a time. But number one, you need to know the steps, and number two, you can't skip any. You have to go from one to the next. So here are the steps. Step one is to find the ratio and write as a fraction. And that should be pretty easy to do because you know the ratio words that show you the relationship. So if you can find the ratio, then all you do is replace the ratio word with a fraction line and you have the fraction. Step two, find out what the top and the bottom of ratio stand for. This is the most important step. You have to realize in a word problem, you don't just have numbers. Each number represents something. So you need to find out what the top and the bottom of the ratio stand for. By the way, if you skip this step, you got a 50-50 chance of getting the problem wrong. And that's not very good odds. I don't think you want a 50 on your next test. All right. The third step is find the additional information and put it in the appropriate place. Now that's just a fancy way of saying find out whatever information is left and put it where it belongs. And then solve the proportion. Now we're back to what we learned the other day. Cross multiply the two numbers that give you an answer, set up a simple one-step equation with multiplication in it, and solve by dividing on both sides. And the last step, which people tend to skip, is check to make sure your answer makes sense. If you mess up step two and you put the things in the wrong place, then you're going to get the problem wrong. But if you check and make sure your answer makes sense, your answer will not make sense. So that's what's important here. So now, let's look at an example of how to do this. Say we had a problem that said this: 3 out of every 4 students in class are girls. If there are 24 students in class, how many are boys? Let's say how many are girls for now. Now, if I want to solve this problem using those steps I just told you, the first step is to find the ratio and write as a fraction. And that would be pretty easy to do here, since the ratio words out of every is right here. And if you write as a fraction, it becomes 3 over 4. So find the ratio, 3 out of every 4 students, and write as a fraction. Now the second step is to find out what the top and the bottom stand for. And that's the most important step. And in this case, it's a little tricky because what does the 3 stand for? It doesn't stand out for out of. You have to look at the whole sentence. It says 3 out of every 4 students in class are girls. Well, we know 4 students in class, so the bottom stands for students in class. And the 3 stands for the ones that are girls. And again, it's kind of tricky. The 3 is in the back of the sentence, what it stands for, but the 4 is in the front. So again, 3 girls out of every 4 students in class. Now, the next step is to find the additional information and put it in the appropriate place. What else is given here? 24 students. And where's the appropriate place to put that? Well, it's students in class. So students in class go on the bottom. Once you've done this, the rest of the problem is just like your homework the other night. Cross multiply. 3 times 24, 24 times 3, that's 12, carry you 1, 6 and 1 is 7, that's 72. And 4 times girls would be 4G, or 4X, whatever you like. And now you have a simple one-step equation. Solve by dividing by 4 on both sides, and 4 goes into 72, goes 1 time, remainder 3, and it goes 8 times, remainder 0. And again, that means that G equals 18, which is the number of girls in the class. And finally, does that make sense that 18 students in class are girls? That's an awful lot of girls, but it does make sense. Why is it so many girls? Because 3 out of every 4 students in class are girls. That means most of the students in class are girls. So 18 students are girls makes sense. And that's the answer to your problem. So again, when you solve the problem, use those 5 steps. Find the ratio right as a fraction, find out what the top and the bottom ratios stand for, find the additional information, put it in the appropriate place, solve the proportion, and make sure it makes sense. And again, if you skip a step, you can get the whole thing wrong. The most important step is step 2, finding out what the top and the bottom ratios stand for, because once you know that, the rest of it's pretty easy.